everyone. My name is Jack McDougall, and I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Washington Board of Trade. Thank you for joining us today. This is the 26th discussion that we've hosted since the onset of the pandemic to explore regional issues and the path forward. Today, I'm especially interested to learn more about National Landing and what it means for our region. We have a really great panel, and I want to thank them all, Jack, Lance, Evan, and Nora, for sharing your time with us today. Before we get into the conversation, I want to acknowledge and thank our presenting sponsor, eXp, a leading engineering and architecture firm, for making this possible. With that, please welcome Mark Dvorak, the President and Chief Operations Officer at eXp. Going to share some brief remarks with us, introduce our panelists, and get things started. So with that, Mark, over to you, and thanks again.
All right, thank you, Jack. I got my cell phone on silent mode, but that doesn't prevent my dogs to start barking, which they just did a few minutes ago. So eXp is delighted to partner with the great friends at the Greater Washington Board of Trade and sponsor this fantastic event. And we're excited to be part of the unique and exciting transformation at National Landing and supporting many of the stakeholders, some of which I see here today. Firstly, who is eXp? eXp is a worldwide consulting group of engineers, architects, planners, and scientists. And we've been around for over a century with 3,500 plus professionals and growing, 90 plus offices throughout the world. We are the fourth largest privately held, with all internal shareholders, EA firm in North America. So that allows us to tackle the big stuff, and we're also nimble enough to go after anything large and small. What makes us unique, though, for our size is that we are a very flat organization, which allows us to be extremely responsive. Decisions can be made immediately, and they do not require a 12-page matrix and 8 signatures to respond. Me and our CEO, one of the words that we hate the most is matrix, and what we also hate is excuses when our clients are waiting. So our clients demand exceptional results at a quicker pace, and therefore they don't need an aircraft carrier to provide solutions. So this is a new age. Some of the things that we do, we're both strong in the vertical and horizontal, all modes of transportation, infrastructure, and then buildings from hospitals to science and technology, federal to hospitality and gaming to theme parks. We actually do it all. And one specific thing to point out is that we're ranked #2 in ENR for data center design, which we're very strong at, obviously. So now closer to this area. With multiple offices in Virginia, including Chantilly, NOMA in Washington, D.C., and also in Townsend, Maryland, all led by exceptional entrepreneurs who focus on delivering and exceeding the client's expectations, eXp is committed to the presence and growth of the service offerings in the Mid-Atlantic sector, and specifically the D.C. Metropolitan area. Now I'll get off my soapbox and specifically to why we are here. National Landing, which encompasses in Northern Virginia neighborhoods of Crystal City, Pentagon City, and Potomac Yard, is undergoing an exciting transformation. Big investments in buildings, transportation, and public amenities are predicted to benefit local residents while stimulating the economic activity. Today, we will hear from Jack Potter from the Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, Lance Collins from the Virginia Tech Innovations Campus, and Evan Regan-Levine from JBG Smith on what they are expecting from the National Landing project and lessons they have learned that can be applied across the DC metro region. Nora Gardner from McKinsey will moderate the conversation. Nora serves as managing partner of McKinsey's Washington, D.C. office, specializing in organizational change and talent management. She supports clients across the public, private, and social sectors, including healthcare, pharmaceuticals, scientific agencies, and defense. If you have any questions during the discussion, please use the Q&A box, and we will address them at the end of the conversation. Now, I will turn it over to Nora to frame the discussion and for her to introduce your panelists.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jack, for those introductions, and to the Greater Washington Board of Trade and eXp for making today's event possible. We're really excited to discuss National Landing today. Amazon's HQ2 bid captivated the nation when it was announced in 2017, and our region rightly celebrated the announcement and the award of National Landing HQ2 site in 2018. The bid for National Landing put a major economic development initiative package together, which of course incorporated accommodation of Amazon's footprint in the form of 25,000 new jobs and 4 million square feet of office space, but also included some real differentiators in the aspects of talent and also transportation and infrastructure. So it included the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, which we'll hear more about today, and also investments in K through 12 and post-secondary technical education. And on the infrastructure side, it included updates to existing metro stations and also my favorite part, which is a pedestrian bridge from the site over to Reagan National Airport. Our research on successful innovation districts shows the following factors really matter: a cluster strategy built around 2 to 3 sectors or technologies, venture capital and R&D funding, of course, a ready supply of talent, real estate and infrastructure, and also community and place building. Our region is the 3rd largest tech hub in terms of tech talent in the nation, behind the Bay Area and New York. And it's both an importer and exporter of talent. Also, relative to those other talent hubs, it's enriched for diverse talent and sub-occupations like information security and cyber. So all of this has set really high expectations for the transformative impact that national landing could have on our region. By some estimates, more than $7 billion of economic impact across increases in jobs, wages, and beyond. It also has the potential to transform our region into less of a one company or one industry town and really enhance the diversity of the business ecosystem. So really high expectations, but also some real challenges to make sure we're keeping into account. First, of course, changes in technology, but also challenges in affordability and transportation and other infrastructure. And on top of all of that, of course, this year has been an extraordinary year in 2020 through the disruptions to lives and livelihoods and what that has brought. So national landing, of course, is much more than just a project. It can be viewed as a microcosm of the future economic state of our region, incorporating where they live, how people learn, the technology they use, how they get around, how they work, how they play, and how this all can come together for a thriving and inclusive community. So I'd invite our panelists to turn on their video. I'm going to introduce each of our panelists and then we'll start with some questions for each of them. And as you heard from Mark, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen to put your questions in, and we'll try to get to those in particular toward the end of the discussion, but please keep those coming. So let me introduce our panelists. First, Evan Regan-Levine. Evan is Executive Vice President in JBG Smith's Investment Group and specializes in real estate, research, and strategic innovation. He helps shape the firm's investment strategy through data and analytics, and also assists in underwriting, acquisition, and planning of new development projects like National Landing. Prior to joining JBG in 2013, Evan was an associate with Monday Properties and served for 2 years in market research with JLL. Our next panelist is Lance Collins, Executive Director and Vice President of the Innovation Campus at Virginia Tech. Lance joined the Virginia Tech community in August, so relatively new to our region, and in an inaugural role as Vice President and Executive Director. Collins came to Virginia Tech from Cornell University, where he served as the Joseph Silbert Dean of Engineering for 10 years. He was also part of the leadership team that successfully bid to partner with New York City to build Cornell Tech, which opened its Roosevelt Island campus in 2017. Prior to Cornell, Collins spent 11 years as a professor of chemical engineering at Penn State University. And finally, Jack Potter, who's the president and CEO of the Metropolitan Washington Airport Authority. In this role, he oversees Ronald Reagan Washington National and Washington Dulles International Airports, as well as the Dulles Toll Road in Northern Virginia and construction of the Silver Line extension of the Washington area's metro mass transit system. So certainly an esteemed group, and I'm sure with lots of thoughts about National Landing and what it can mean for our region. So first I'd like to go to you, Evan. Give us a bit about the genesis of JBG's plan for National Landing and how the HQ2 opportunity potentially changed your plans or development of the region. And would also love any early remarks you'd like our audience to hear.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Nora. Really appreciate the chance to connect with everyone here on the phone and talk a little bit about our project at National Landing. I'm sure many of you are very familiar with our company and our role in the region. And really, the beginning of our role at National Landing started actually coming out of the merger between Charles E. Smith Vornado's DC operation and the JBG companies, which was our predecessor private equity fund manager. I was based here in Washington. And really, we saw at the core of that an incredible opportunity in what's today called National Landing, but wasn't originally called National Landing. Really in Crystal City, because we thought there was really a special confluence there of transportation, of tenancy, of access to the district. And really, when we looked at all the other great neighborhoods around the DC metro region that had that kind of density and transit access and real estate fundamentals, we realized that the only real difference in National Landing, or what would become National Landing, was twofold. One, that it lacked retail amenities, and two, that it lacked a balance of office and residential. And when we think about every great neighborhood, those are at least 18-hour places. They're not sort of 9 to 5 type of places. And when we started our planning there, we really said, look, this has all the building blocks. We need to add housing. We need to add retail. And as we started to develop that plan, actually not that long after the merger was announced, we actually started to get rumblings of the Amazon HQ2 pursuit in the form of a lot of sort of whispers and calls about, hey, there's a big tenant coming out to market. They're massive in scale. It's going to be a national search. And so actually working on that project as it evolved into HQ2, and as we started to learn more, we realized that when we thought about the talent potential of the DC metro region, you mentioned in your opening remarks, and then we thought about where in the region we could accommodate an incredibly fast growing dynamic technology company, we said, hey, this makes a lot of sense. And so we started sitting down with Amazon as part of that process, and not to rehash everything, but really at the end of the day, the DC metro region fundamentals, I think, played a massive role in really driving Amazon's decision to locate here in terms of the talent, in terms of the great university presence, the great infrastructure presence that we had. But what that also drove it was the plan to revitalize these neighborhoods and really connect 3 neighborhoods together to provide scale. The real decision to work with the Commonwealth to bring in great groups like Virginia Tech to help drive even more talent creation in that region. And then also our plans from a real estate development perspective to improve the housing in the market, to improve the retail in the market, to actually make it a great place, things like public spaces, parks, et cetera. And that's a lot of stuff that real estate people always talk about, but to be able to do it on such a massive scale alongside our partners at the City of Alexandria, the County of Arlington, the Commonwealth of Virginia, Virginia Tech, MWA, all these other local groups, it really was a group effort to say, how can we take advantage of the great bones this place has and position it really, really well to capture not only Amazon's growth, but also, to your point, help over time to become a world-class innovation district that really does take advantage of everything that's been invested in it to be another second engine alongside the federal government for the region. The last thing I'd add on that before turning it back to you is I think that we've spent a lot of time thinking, especially post-COVID, about what does the future of our industry look like and what does the future of real estate look like from the perspective of companies who are driven by and need connectivity, everything that we're doing right now. And so we've launched a major initiative that I'll talk a lot about that I'm co-heading within JBG Smith to invest heavily in connectivity and smart city infrastructure. Some of you may have seen our recent $25 million acquisition of CBRS Spectrum. I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but we really think that not only do we need to reposition this market from the perspective of providing the right housing, the right retail, the right experience, the right infrastructure, but extend that to say, how do we also provide the right technological infrastructure to attract the companies of the future?
Great, thank you, Evan. Lance, over to you, and welcome to the region on behalf of the Board of Trade and our audience. As the newest member to the DC region, what excited you about the opportunity to lead the Innovation Campus? And also, what lessons can you bring from the Roosevelt Island Cornell project to our region?
Well, first, Nora, thank you. I want to thank the Greater Washington Board of Trade for inviting me. I'm very pleased to participate, and loved Evan's comments just a moment ago. Just what I will say is that I think this is a relatively new phenomenon, what we're calling the innovation campus, or campuses that have an economic development component. So as you said earlier, Amazon was looking at a lot of different municipalities across the country. Over 200 made bids, and largely those are, sort of tax reductions and that kind of thing. But what was unique about this one was to say, hey, we're going to build a campus. We're going to deal with the biggest pain point that tech companies have, which is talent. And so I think that made a difference. I mean, it's not exclusively, there were a lot of other things that came together to make this an attractive bid. But I think that this is a new phenomenon. And as you mentioned, I have been through this before. So when I was at Cornell, New York City went through a similar analysis, decided that there was a growing, burgeoning tech industry within New York City that was, again, choked by lack of talent. And in particular, people that understand the technology side, but also the business side. And I think that combo is very powerful. And yes, was being produced, but not at the scale that was needed by the industries that were growing so rapidly. Tech has a tendency to really expand quickly. And so meeting those needs is a new challenge. And traditional academic campuses do that well, but this notion of building a campus which is laser focused on developing talent that is directed at those industries is a relatively new phenomenon. So what we're talking about here is to build a campus that at full build, which is 10 years from now, so not immediate, but in 10 years, will be producing 750 master's degree level students per year. So we're talking about a fairly sizable scale, impactful in terms of the needs for the region. Another thing I wanted to point, and we'll talk a little bit later, is that we have set a high bar in terms of diversity. You already noted this is a diverse community, and the tech community is diverse in comparison to the rest of the country. But that said, there is still sizable gaps, both in terms of women and underrepresented minorities, in what is a really lucrative field. And so we want to address that. The companies can't solve a problem if the universities don't address the problem. And so we have to work together. And so this campus is all about that kind of collaboration. And I want to set a high bar. So I want this to be the most diverse graduate program in the country. And we'll get there by setting a high bar. And finally, we want to be integrated with the broader community. Part of the way that we can sustain that kind of productivity would be to work with the K through 12 system, because obviously if that's not connecting up with what we're trying to do, then we will not be long-term successful either. So that's another component of what we're working on.
Thank you, Lance. And Jack, what were your thoughts and reactions to the Amazon announcement? And of course, thinking about implications to National Airport, but also transportation and commuting load in the whole region. Would love your thoughts.
Well, first, thank you for having me on this panel. Appreciate you leading it, Nora. Look, we were super excited when Amazon said they were coming, and we were thrilled with the notion of the name being National Landing. It does relate to airport, and so we really applaud that choice of a name. We look at this as a huge opportunity for us. Huge opportunity in the sense that it'll improve transit. We're the #1 transit airport in America with the metro station at our airport. Now we're going to have the VRE station and a bridge to the VRE station. And so another transit opportunity for people using our airport. We're very excited about the smart cities that were mentioned, because we'd like to plug into that. We'd like it to be a seamless transition from National Landing onto our airport. We are really excited to have Virginia Tech in the neighborhood and look forward to working with you, Lance, because we are all going to be very interested, or we are today, but we're very interested in talent and where our future talent is going to come from. Having additional neighbors creates a traveling base for us. So from a passenger standpoint, that's a fantastic opportunity for us. And the notion of us looking going forward, for some development, mutual development between JBG and our neighbors across the railroad tracks and the highway is critically important to us. And so we look at this again as a huge, huge win for the metropolitan area and a win for the Airports Authority. Now, going forward, though, the trick is going to be how do we get from where we are today to where we want to be a decade or 2 decades from now? And there's going to be a lot of construction that's going to go on. It's going to disrupt some traffic, and we know, particularly as construction occurs on Route 1, we already have some bottlenecks in this area. So I'm looking forward to, having folks use transit more effectively. There's a concept globally of an airport city. And when I first came to the airports, I went to a conference, and the city that they held up throughout the country, throughout the world, as the epitome of an airport city was Reagan National, because of the high transit, because of proximity to a downtown area, the fact that all these hotels and Crystal City built up as a neighbor. Now the Pentagon was there as well, but we'd like to take a little credit for it. But this notion that you have a hub that's kind of interactive with the neighborhood and each benefit from each other's presence is something that we'd really like to work toward. Now, again, the transition will be difficult. We already have problems with road traffic on 95, on the GW Parkway, the 14th Street Bridge. I think we collectively have to solve them. There were problems that existed already, but I think you solve for them with transit, with additional bus service, and anything that brings people to a national airport is a win for us. And continue to integrate National Airport with the surrounding area is crucial, I think, to all of us being successful going forward.
Yeah, I have to say, as a consultant and road warrior, the idea of being able to commute on foot to National Airport is just super exciting.
Sure.
This brings me, though, to, as I said, 2020 has been no ordinary year. I'd actually love to hear from each of you about the impacts of COVID, on the sort of areas that you cover. As obviously, Jack, it's been an absolutely stunning impact on traffic at National Airport and air travel. But as Lance mentioned, this is building a community for the future, for 10 years from now. And so it gives us both an opportunity to think about changes to build toward, a next normal, a different future. I'm wondering how you're each thinking about COVID impacts and whether that's changing your plans. Evan, I'd love to start with you on this one, if you don't mind.
Sorry about that. So absolutely. And it's interesting. I think like everyone else in our business, we're totally not immune from the impacts of COVID on the real estate space, particularly on the retail sector, which is really at the core of our efforts to placemake. And I think while we're doing everything we can to address that, to try and really make sure that our retailers stay healthy and remain at the backbone of providing amenities in our submarkets, it also got us thinking about what are the long-term trends that are kind of come out of this. Once people can go back to restaurants, once they can go back to work. And one of the biggest things that we get asked about all the time is really the work from home trend. And I know that's a discussion you can talk about in an entirely separate panel. But as we think about National Landing, we're really looking at, to your point, what's the next 10 years look like? And when we think about the next 10 years and what's a defining trend, we don't think that this maturation of telework technology is going to go away. And we think that over time, industries like cloud computing and cybersecurity that protect everything that we're doing here and enable everything that we're doing here, those don't go away, but they become even more at the core of growth companies need to expand. And if we think about National Landing as an innovation district and a place where innovation can take place, we really do look at it as a microcosm for the broader region, where we've got this incredible combination of talent and this real estate development opportunity and these incredible partners who are going to be helping to bolster a diverse talent pipeline. We said, well, what are the kinds of companies who are going to grow? What do they look like and how are they going to grow post-COVID? And that's really what underscored this desire to become a more smart and connected city in National Landing. And so we were, before COVID, already thinking about and spending time learning about things like a dense fiber network, a 5G deployment, providing spectrum for innovators. And that's actually an idea that came out of a collaboration with Virginia Tech, and we can talk about that. But our reaction has been in many ways to think about the fact that, yes, at some point people will want to gather again and be outside and be at restaurants and be in great places, and they're going to want to be and live in urban areas. People are doing that now, even to some extent to the detriment of their own health and safety. There's just such a draw of being humans and gathering in places, but we're also going to see growth in the companies that enable distance interaction, not necessarily just because of COVID, but because over time it does provide a certain flexibility and a desire for growth that can happen regardless of sort of metro regions. So we've, I think, post-COVID doubled down on our commitment to urban, walkable, transit-oriented areas, not thinking that that trend will change, but figuring out how can we further enhance and amenitize those with connectivity options that'll enable us to do much more of what we're doing now, but also enable us in a very distinct and unique way to attract the kinds of companies who design the technologies that we'll be using to do collaborations like this in the future, and that enable all aspects of remote business. And that's really where our focus on smart city investment has come from, and why we've doubled down on that in a post-COVID world.
Thanks, Evan. And Lance, for you, people are working from home. People are also completing degrees from home and studying online. However, there's also no substitute for being, in the lab, in the field, and interacting with others. And I assume, that will still continue. How do you think about, the thesis of really the innovation campus and what needs to be done really, in a collaboration space, and what can be done via that amazing 5G network that Evan's gonna put in place for the campus?
Well, I loved Evan's reference to working at home. Studying at home is another example of the changes that are going on. So the context that I have for this is I reflect back a few months ago, before I arrived here in Virginia. I was, as you mentioned, Dean of Engineering at Cornell when the pandemic hit, and all of higher ed, literally, school by school went online in a matter of days, or at most about 2 weeks. I can say to you that at the time, we did not think it was possible. There were actual predictions that this was going to crash the network. This was just not going to be sustainable. And we really didn't know. It was like running an experiment in real time without really knowing the outcome, with so much on the line, so many students, displaced. It was really a moment, I think, for higher ed. Well, we made it, and it was, in my opinion, it's transformative. In so many words, there's multiple modes. Back to Evan's point, we like to be together. Yes, we do. And there will be recovery from this pandemic once either a vaccine or therapeutics have reached a point where we can really sort of get it under control, and we'll get there. I don't know when, but we'll get there. We'll start to return to, quote, the new normal. But we've discovered there's another mode of communication, of ways in which we can meet, conduct business, conduct education, et cetera. And that it's not just one or the other, but there are advantages to one and the other. And by way of example, at one point we were putting a symposium together to discuss a particular topic that's not so relevant. And we had originally wanted it in person. The pandemic hit, so we said, well, we got to do it online. And then we realized, well, now we can invite people from all around the world. So the quality sort of suddenly took this big step up. So it's not all negative, it's just different. And that now that you have a sort of set of options, we're now realizing almost everything could be thought through in a different way. I think higher ed will never be the same. I think online education is going to get a big jolt forward. And it's beyond just Zoom communication. There'll be new platforms built. There's a new market. There's a new group of faculty ready to take advantage of that, of those opportunities. It's just a transformation. And I think that, so as with every challenge, there's the opportunity on the other side. We're all trying to sort through what are the real new opportunities that we have. And so I'll just before I close, I just wanted to reference back to Evan's other comment that this is really putting technology in the forefront, and it certainly is. And really thinking about it, not only in terms of bandwidth and getting communications to function, but I view it as also advancing platforms. Meeting platforms are kind of okay. They kind of reflect the standard things you do in a lecture where there's one person that's sort of dominantly speaking, the professor to a group. But there's a lot more to learning than that. And I think that this whole transformation that I'm describing will advance also software platforms that will be more conducive to healthier interaction, peer interaction, the kinds of things that happen when traditionally you're out of class with your friends, just in informal sorts of ways, discussing what you're learning, which really isn't so well represented by the current system. So I think but now that there's this bigger market, people are going to be driving that forward. So I think it's actually really an exciting time for higher ed, despite all of the challenges that are happening.
Yeah, thank you. Jack, how about COVID impacts for you? I know you've spoken on a webinar here with the Greater Washington Board of Trade specifically about this. I know it's quite challenging, but would love to hear how you're thinking about it, both in the immediate term and longer term.
Well, it's had a dramatic impact on us. So we went down as low as 5% of 2019 traffic. Right now, we have about an 80% decline. And so it's significant. And so if we're lucky, we'll hit 10 million passengers this year versus 50 million last year. So it has a dramatic impact on our economics. However, we're not going to dwell on where we are. We're looking at it as we only have one way to go, and that's up. And we do recognize it's going to be multiple year recovery. The recession, it took us 5 years to dig out of the recession. It's going to probably take that long for the aviation industry to dig out of this COVID situation. And there has been change in behavior, and we need to be very frank about it. But we looked at this as a window of opportunity for us to accelerate some projects. We've been very active in repairing runways and changing out concrete at a time when we didn't have activity. Project Journey, which is our expansion at Reagan National, was able to get ahead of schedule as a result of the fact that we were operating and working and didn't have to work around the passenger traffic. And so we looked at that as an opportunity. Going forward, obviously, we're going to have to change our economic model and really tighten our belt. But not at the expense of the passengers. And we're going to continue to build, to invest in those things that are going to make the airport more attractive. Certainly, airports and the airlines taking a lead on trying to protect passengers. And I think that you're starting to hear some stories and read stories about just how safe it is to come through the airport. But suffice it to say, this has been a challenge. It's also a challenge. We operate a toll road, and our traffic there was down well over half of what it had been. So right now we have our financial hats on, and we're trying to model our way out of this challenge. We're very grateful for help that we got from the federal government. But believe me, National Landing, we think, is going to be part of our long-term financial solution. Again, we think it's going to bring additional traffic to us with a greater base of natural customers for us. And as I mentioned, real estate opportunities. And so we're not looking behind, we're looking ahead, and we're looking in a very positive way because we know the traffic will come back. We know that people are going to want to vacation around the world, and we're prepared for it. We will be prepared for it already today. But we're building toward a much brighter future going forward. And again, we're going to learn a lot in the course of the next decade as we integrate Amazon, Virginia Tech into the neighborhood. And I'm excited about it.
Great. I've got a deep dive question for each of you. I'd also remind our audience to put questions in the Q&A feature of the Zoom chat. Evan, I want to start with you on technology and smart cities investments. How important are these? How are you thinking about them? And how do they really contribute to the vision of what National Landing can be?
Absolutely. And I think, this is something that for us, and for me in particular, I think is really exciting. because as we think about the future of place, and you've heard this, I think, from a couple of the other panelists here, Lance, you were talking about how higher education will never be the same. And Jack talking about how, we need to foster a greater connection between, the real estate and the airport and make things seamless for people. And I think for all of us, as we think about the futures of our industries, we think about the fact that so much of the built environment for the next big revolution or change coming economically is this coming together of the built environment and the digital environment. And that's something that, innovators on the university side are working very hard on, innovators in the private sector are working on, but it takes collaborations like the one we're trying to build here to actually realize that vision. And it's because we have such strong partners in EMWA and Virginia Tech and others, including Amazon, in the market, that we really thought, hey, how can we really make this a showcase and a first of its kind of deployment? And so from a smart city perspective, that term gets thrown around all the time. And a lot of the time, it's really just, it's a parlor trick. It's something to show off, oh, how many people are standing in a certain area, or when does the next, metro arrive? It's not really about how do you create a differentiated experience. And I think talking about it only in terms of experience also really forgets a lot of what can actually happen if you provide the right kind of technological investment. So for us, really what we're thinking about is digital placemaking. And the reason we talk about it that way is, a big cornerstone of who we are as a company is our efforts on the placemaking side. We want to curate the right retailers, a mix of national and local. We want to create the kinds of open spaces and gathering places that people want and bring a mix of housing and office around it to support those retailers and really create a place. But we're not the ones, especially not me, cooking the meals and providing the goods to be sold or really doing anything in those spaces. And so when we think about what we can do from a digital perspective to create the same kind of great place, we really want to be a facilitator and a digital placemaker. And so when we think about that, it means using our scale, in a project like this, partnering up with folks like the two gentlemen on the phone here and others to say, all right, let's look at this scale and let's start with underlying fiber optic network. Let's try and bring the best, most dense fiber optic network possible that we can connect through to all of the different antenna and wireless solutions that are coming in the future. And so we build on that, we'll overbuild that, we'll provide a lot more access. On top of that, we'll say, how do we actually work with our partners at the city and county level to develop a really clear path to deploying 5G small cells across the market so we can encourage carriers and other providers to come in and provide that service. And once that's lit up, how do we give innovators the tools they need via CBRS or other spectrums to do private networking, to do test beds, to do things like testing massive Internet of Things deployments across a physical environment? And we think if we create all of these things, we can further enhance that offering. So a high growth company who's developing a cutting edge cloud computing solution, if they have the best cross connects from a data center in National Landing running on the fastest, densest, most secure fiber, they can innovate differently than someone who's just sort of anywhere else in the world. Especially if on top of that, they can have access to the best wireless solutions that are private, that are actually scaled for innovators. And we work, increasingly with companies who are thinking about how do you bring some of these technological innovations to bear on a very micro scale, but we scale it up across this entire real estate portfolio. And I think, one example that I give of why this is so important in driving innovation and why actually what's happening at National Landing is so special is I point back to Virginia Tech for a second. And I had a great conversation, call it about a year ago, when we were finally just starting to really dig into how could we collaborate even more on the innovation campus. And I had a conversation with a professor and an expert at Virginia Tech who was working on developing SaaS solutions, which is basically access to CBRS and other wireless spectrums that can happen in the cloud. And I know we're going really deep on this, so bear with me for just a second. We at the time were talking a lot about how do we make their density of fiber investments? How do we attract the providers for that? How do we bring, edge computing and cloud computing operators into National Landing? How do we bring some of the best national wireless carriers? And this professor and expert at Virginia Tech grabbed me after the meeting and said, have you ever thought about buying spectrum? And said, well, no, we didn't think that was something that was part of this. And he explained to us, this is how innovators use this. And this is why this CBRS spectrum is so important, because it's happening on the local, on the county level. It's not just happening nationally or at these big metro region levels. And over the course of several conversations with this expert, who we met because of the Innovation Campus, we decided this is a great investment opportunity. This is something we can invest in, and to make sure that tenants who come here can really innovate in any way they want in a really advanced way. And I think it's things like that where we can create the canvas for innovators that help us draw the right companies to help grow, fill our office real estate, bring jobs into the county and the city and the Commonwealth, and bring companies who can collaborate like we did with Virginia Tech. It's those kind of experiences that have led us to start thinking about these connectivity enhancements, not just sitting here and saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if we had more bandwidth for better Zoom calls? It's saying, how can you take that to the next level? And the only way that you do things like that, or when you collaborate with MWA to really say, how can we actually bring some of that airport experience into National Landing and foster a greater connection than just this pedestrian bridge, so you create a more seamless experience to drive traffic to the airport, but also to provide a level of connectivity that no one else in the world, physical connectivity, can really boast of being walkable to, and it's having this blend between an airport and a major development site. That's where we can start having these really interesting conversations around the merging of the physical and the digital that really do spur, I think, a tremendous amount of growth.
Thank you, Evan. I know you and many of you are very passionate also about making sure this is inclusive growth. I serve on the Connected DMV Reopen Task Force, and this is something we're really focused on and thinking about, making sure that we don't enhance inequality or enhance a digital divide through what we're planning and building. Lance, I'll direct this to you. What can we do to make sure that not just National Landing, but all of the growth and development and recovery that we're planning is inclusive, as inclusive as possible for our region, to make sure we don't enhance inequality?
That's a terrifically important question. I just wanted to just reflect back before I answer it that Evan, it's Jeff Reed that is the professor and is an expert in spectrum. It is, I just wanted to comment, thank you for all that you've done, JBG Smith, in building a district, because I think what it is hitting critical mass and recognizing that, everything is attracting the other things. So if we can differentiate in terms of what you're offering in terms of infrastructure in digital technology and access, that creates sort of a platform upon which other things then build, et cetera. So these things will just continue to take off. So very, very wise move, and congratulations for coming up with it. This is such an important question, Nora. This is one that I have wrestled with my entire life, both as a consumer, just as when I was going through school, and here we are, decades later, still struggling with it. But I feel like there are examples upon which we can build. So if you actually look at Cornell Engineering, so where I was, I had success in terms of bringing diversity. So the college is currently now equal numbers of men and women. And in engineering, the national average is about 20%. So we were over twice the national average in terms of
I'm an NC State grad, engineering, good old engineering school. So experienced those myself.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a stubborn problem, but what it's about is really looking at all of the ways in which people kind of fall off of having that opportunity. And I mentioned earlier my interest in working with K through 12 systems, because in fact, you've really honestly got to back all the way up to there, and not just high school. It's really at middle school and even elementary school where students can, and parents, without real recognizing or understanding, can be making decisions that look very innocent, and yet have profound implications for access into STEM fields. And I wouldn't just say tech fields, but really broadly science, technology, engineering, and mathematics fields, which really are incredibly long-term, lucrative. There are just lots of benefits to having access, and yet these early stage decisions really can cost students with the talent. And so I think it's important that we bring that talent. We need it. Everything we were talking about the pain points for the tech industry, that talent is really at the heart of it. But it's more than just numbers. I think it's easy to think it's all about numbers. Diversity adds another dimension than just numbers. It turns out that if you build a team and ask a team to solve a complex problem, if the team is diverse, the team can perform at a higher level. So this is really about excellence. It's really about aligning who we are with what we're trying to accomplish and all of these great ambitions that are on the table here. And so if we don't get a diverse team, you sort of lose some of the ideation that you would otherwise have. So it's a double whammy. It's a bigger sacrifice than we should ever allow ourselves to take. So once I kind of realized, oh, these are really aligned, that excellence and diversity really are completely aligned and self-reinforcing, you begin to then think about, okay, where are things falling off and how can I create new on-ramps? So it's important to me that this campus not only just have a sort of the usual trajectory where somebody is just marching through, from, grade school to high school to undergraduate to the graduate programs in the innovation campus, but that we look at ways for non-traditional students to find their way onto the campus, because that is often where I think people feel like they don't know how to get back on. And we want to create those. So working professionals who may be in one area but decided that they really want to move into tech, we want to be open for business for them. And looking at ways to use online education that I was talking about earlier to open doors, so people that potentially at one point in their lives cannot come to campus because family situations won't allow it, but they could still take courses online in the evenings and that kind of thing, that they can begin to position themselves with programming along the lines we're calling now sort of pre-tech, so they can get, sort of position themselves so they're ready to get a graduate degree. So I think it's really being creative and using all of those creative juices that we have in academia to think about how we can address this particular problem.
Thank you, really thoughtful. I want to get to a couple of questions we're getting from the audience in the chat. Evan, for you, a question on housing plans for National Landing, but also a question on sustainability, green and renewable resources. How are you thinking about that in both the development and also how National Landing will function?
Absolutely. So, on the first question of housing, this is something that is so central to not only why Amazon selected our region, but also how you can bring a level of inclusivity into growth. And I think one of the things, if you look at so many precedents across the country, one of the real challenges with tech growth isn't only that it's been uneven in terms of who it benefits directly through employment, but also that there have been these knock-on effects that technology growth can often have really, really deleterious sort of externalities for a lot of low-income communities all across the country, especially around the area of housing. And I think one of the wrong-headed moves when you study some of these other places where this growth has happened that's really contributed to a lack of inclusivity economically has been that you've had basically a cap and a ceiling on housing production. And you've had markets that have seen such tremendous growth in hiring in these really great high-skilled, high-income jobs. But that means that if you don't build the housing to accommodate those folks, then they push others out of their housing. And I think there are two ways to address that. And one is to build an adequate amount of housing, not only right in proximity to the campus or the growth engines, which, we're trying to do by delivering, over 5,000 units of new housing at a market rate basis, but it's also encouraging development basically across the board. And that seems very self-interested for a developer. I will say that, for us, the real challenge and really in looking at this is that we want economic growth to continue. And if you don't provide housing, you're not going to see economic growth, but you also have these other negative cases. And if you look at not only production, but also preservation of housing, and that's where the Washington Housing Initiative, that we're very focused on and that we've done in collaboration with Federal City Council and created the Washington Housing Conservancy, is a way to say, we have a responsibility in bringing this growth into the market to not only provide new housing for the new entrants and the people taking some of these great tech jobs, but also to preserve existing affordable housing in these really high demand areas in particular that would be really, really at risk if your housing production on the new side doesn't keep up with new demand. And even in general, as you just see, a growth really economically in high income, high wage, highly skilled jobs. And I think it's great, what Lance is talking about. What can we do to train more and more people and more diverse teams to build excellence and really look at that kind of segment of our economy that's driven by knowledge workers of being more diverse. And I think that's amazing. And not only do we have to go back to K-12 to really think about addressing that economic issue, but we also have to do it in terms of making sure that you've provided housing and you've thought through, how do you house those people who are coming into that space, but also the folks who might not be moving into that space, but still serve an incredibly important function in keeping our communities really vibrant. And that growth ceiling has impacted cities like New York and Boston and San Francisco and made it harder for them to grow, and particularly hard for them to grow inclusively. So I think that's a massive priority for us. The second thing, just in terms of sustainability, I think, the concept of National Landing is a living lab. It is a place where you bring great, academic leaders like Jeff Reed. I know, I didn't want to sort of throw his name out there before, but he really does stand out as just an example of, in one area where Virginia Tech has just had some incredible leadership in the wireless space. How do you get a guy like that and a company like Federated Wireless that he helped found to be part of this ecosystem? And the reason that they're here is because of, the Virginia Tech connection and the incredible tech ecosystem in Northern Virginia. And we hope, especially in the future, really because of what we're doing with CBRS spectrum. But they're an example of a company that's really part of this idea of a living lab in the region, of being here because of all these different factors. So if we really think about sustainability, how do we create the same living lab there? And one area where that I think really jives with our plans very specifically is going beyond what we traditionally do today, just with LEED standards and a focus on providing sustainable buildings, to actually encourage companies who are developing the technology that helps buildings become more sustainable, have them come and develop it here. Now, that's not just because we have an amazing engineering school that's here or because Amazon is here. It's because if you look at companies like that, many of them are investing very heavily in sensorizing everything. So putting sensors on things like air handling units, putting sensors in spaces, putting it in the glass to determine, what's happening in terms of the heat load on a building. And so really being able to control these things like HVAC units and control lighting in buildings and make it more connected and have it be driven digitally, that's something that really innovative companies do. And that's in what's called the IoT or Internet of Things space. That's where 5G becomes really, really important. If you think about device density, you can't put as many devices on a traditional 4G LTE network in a very concentrated area. If we have 5G, that means we can support more devices. If we have an engineering school, we can support innovators who are working with professors and developing technology and driving technology transfer. How do we then create, basically by putting those two things together, a living lab where companies who are developing the technologies that enable sustainability can do it in a way that's very, very real? And those are the kinds of companies who we hope to attract to National Landing, because they can learn here, they can recruit here, but they can also, and probably most importantly, implement here. And that's really where we've made a focus of our efforts, trying to find cutting edge companies who can be enabled by the investments we're making to come and be part of that sustainability ecosystem that we can build over time here in this district.
Thanks, Evan. I want to hear from each of you about your vision for National Landing. What do you hope in 10 years when we look back, we'll be able to say about National Landing and what it means for our region? Jack, I'm going to start with you.
Well, I think everyone who's on this call has heard a lot of exciting things that are in the works. And I think that I don't know that it's going to be accomplished in 10 years. I think it's going to be an evolutionary thing that's going to take decades to work itself out. And I hope we can continue to build upon a good foundation that we put together in the next 10 years. Certainly, we'll see construction. We'll see the introduction of the smart cities concepts. So we'll put the foundation, and Virginia Tech will have, been well along on its campus. But again, I think it's a foundation of working together, the synergies that exist between not only the three entities represented here, but Amazon and others that will be part of a community that'll grow all around Amazon. And about the opportunity, I do think we have to pay attention to the detail along the way. As much as we need the tech workers to have a place to live, we need to have all of those support workers that are going to enable the tech workers, to do their business. They have to have a place to live. And we do need to have a very inclusive environment here. Part of the transition is going to be not just, diversity as we know it, but also from a demographic standpoint. This whole metropolitan area is moving from a generational change that's occurring. And I think this is going to help facilitate it. You look at the government, you look like an entity like ours that's, a little over 30 years old, demographic that's changing, and that's inhibiting our ability to integrate with, the new generation. So I'm excited about the whole concept, not just the buildings, not just the economic benefits, but the opportunity to really shape and set a foundation for how we want to shape this long-term community that I think is going to serve as a kind of the catalyst or the economic engine for the DMV. So I'm really excited about it.
Thank you, Jack. Lance, your thoughts on the vision?
Well, I think this is a moment we'll reflect back on decades and say, remember when, and that triggered what I think will be an extraordinary growth. Because if one thinks about the sort of tech area of greatest renown at Silicon Valley, the whole Bay Area, and it was really, in some sense, anchored by a couple of really strong institutions, Berkeley and Stanford, and real, driving resources that came into the area at the time, decades ago, in the 50s. If I were to look at where we are today here, and in the proximity of the federal government of the largest economy in the world that is driven enormously by technology in so many different sectors. So yes, Department of Defense, the intelligence agencies, also just, NIST and the other agencies that are here, the companies that are here that are driven by technology. And you just sort of put all of that together and you say it outscales anything that exists. It's just that historically this hadn't grown to be that sort of top tier. I think this is the chance and the time that will make that happen. So I think this is a huge moment in time, and that we will, as I said, decades from now, we'll look back and reflect on this particular moment.
Thank you, Lance. Evan, your vision.
I look at this and I think very similarly along the lines of what Jack and Lance are talking about. And I hope that this is, a moment that leads to something really lasting and really transformative because of what we have the opportunity to do here if we lay the groundwork and do it right. And I think back, we worked with some really interesting urban planners along the way, and the folks at Elkus Manfredi were helping us plan the Virginia Tech campus and the area around it, and National Landing in general showed me a picture that I can't get out of my head. And that was looking at Kendall Square in Cambridge and saying, okay, what did that look like in the 1980s? And you see basically, one or two buildings, a bunch of old government surplus warehouses, and a lot of empty surface lots. And when I think about, people who told us at the beginning, well, why are you spending so much time in Crystal City? Why are you focused on that? It's got an underground mall and all these old buildings. It's not going anywhere. And you're next to this big shopping center strip mall. When I think about how far we've come just in terms of the vision between where we were and where we are today, just in really the past, call it 3 years. And then I think about that picture, it's amazing when you look at the after version there. And in many ways, we were ahead of where that before picture was, but with the right partners over that time, I think we can create not only the first truly connected 5G smart city in the country, but also a world-class innovation district that people actually talk about on the same scale, in the same way you talk about Kendall Square. And maybe not for the same technologies, there's a lot of biotech focus there, but thinking about it from things like AI, cloud computing, cybersecurity, these are all things, Internet of Things, that we want to focus on here and take advantage of what's really been these incredible building blocks in our region. And I think thinking back, Lance, to some of your comments just about what's happened in this region already over time, the fact that we're, depending who you ask, the second or third largest tech talent pool in the country surprises a lot of people, but it really shouldn't. It's really about what can we do with this? And the government has been such a leader already in, really driving things, particularly like cybersecurity. And even when you think about the CIA and AWS on cloud computing, how that was such a revolution. We give the government not enough credit and the government contractors not enough credit for the base they've built here. So how can we take that and supercharge it and turn this into something that is akin to, Kendall Square's role in biotechnology, but more around these emerging areas, particularly cyber, cloud, and other functions that, tie into the work that all three of us plus Amazon are doing in this one really concentrated geography.
Wonderful, thank you. I want to thank all the panelists and also our audience for joining us. This has certainly I learned a few things, and also it's given us, I think, some real inspiration for what we can do together as a region. I'll hand it back over to Jack to wrap us up, but thank you all.
That's great. Nora, thank you. And thank you for helping us work through this really interesting conversation. Very much appreciate that. Appreciate all that we're working on together. here in the region. It's been really great. And Jack, Lance, and Evan, thank you so much for sharing that. There were a number of questions we didn't get to today, so obviously there's great interest in things that are going on here. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with you all. Lance, I agree with you. I think that the JBG play around spectrum is really interesting, and there's going to be a lot to unpack there and really explore that as we move forward. So Evan, looking forward to seeing how that progresses as well. And I think that's going to create a whole new host of opportunities and business models and other things that will ultimately become global standards. So that's, and incubated right here. So that's going to be great. So everybody, again, thank you so much for sharing with us today. And I want to thank everybody who listened in. This will be up and available on our website within a day or so. So if anybody wanted to go back, if they missed something. And with that, thank you again. And everyone, have a great day.